All right, we will return from our break. Thanks, everyone. We will continue on. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to recap some of the 25 capital plan and funding sources, this graph shows the capital projects by department and the funding sources so that you can see the revenues supported by the funding area. So we're proposing 36.9 million in taxation projects, 4.7 million in utility projects. The project distribution, note on this, we have an error on here for social programs. The 27 million should be on the recreation. That is the YCE project, fell into the wrong category there. Therefore, recreation, parks, and culture is 78% of our capital projects this year. Transportation is 14.4%. Protective services is 7.5%, and general government is less than 1%. Funding sources proposed include 22.2 million in grants, 3.875 debenture, 7 million reserves. Noting that the new contribution to capital reserves for 2025 is 3.4, and we're drawing 7 million out. 8.4 other sources are from contributing partner as well as the YCE multiplex. Contributing partner for the Range Road 532, not Range Road, type TWP Road 532. From that, we can go into the next slide, which is our 5-year capital plan. This graph shows the 5-year by department. You can see the cash flowing that we've done for the YCE multiplex in 25 to 27 years. At the same time, in 2025, the other major capital projects fall in the transportation area, where we'll see detail later in the presentation. These figures are budget estimates and subject to change and being updated. However, it does give us a baseline for future capital work. Environment or utilities total in 5 years is $30.1 million. General government is $6.06 million. Protective, but that would include the underground work that maybe would be better suited under transportation services. Protective services for the 5 years is looking at 5.15 million. Recreation, parks, and culture, 83.7 million. Social programs and services, 460,000. Transportation services, 47.6 million. In total, we are planning to do 173 million in capital work over the next 5 years. This is depicted in today's dollars also and not adjusted for inflation. It is important to share with Council the 5-year plan, even just as a forecast, to help evaluate the 1-year plans as there is significant infrastructure required in future years. The next slide is our capital highlights. So staff presented capital projects to senior leadership team totaling $110 million for 2025. This list included the 24 capital projects carried forward into 25. There was 2. The senior leadership team evaluated and revised the list to 41.6 million of capital projects that were funded and proposed to Council a list for consideration of 9 million of unfunded projects. The remaining projects have been deferred to future years. Part of the large number initially proposed to senior leadership was the 80 million for the YCE multiplex was in 1 year versus cash flowing it out. So that's impacting the original number. The next slide shows our, if you remember the table of contents, we're moving into departments at a glance. So we're now looking at the departments in a little more detail. The next slide is our first department is general government, and it includes internal service areas such as ledge services, office of the CAO, IT, communications, finance, HR, building maintenance. When you look at our revenues there, so these are grouped up. You can see the levies and revenues on the top and the expenses related on the bottom. So under revenues for levies and revenue, there's an increase in interest income from 175,000 to 1.25 million. An increase in the Yellowhead County revenue share from 4.8 to 5.2. An allocation of MSI LGFF of 143,000. It formerly was allocated to the finance area, and we've moved it to the general levies and revenue area. Franchise fees include Fortis increase from 400,000 to 452,000. The Yellowhead Gas, the Yellowhead Gas Co-op increase from 10,000 to 51,000. ATCO increase from 600,000 to 640. Under the council area, number 11, there's nothing significant to note. Finance, we have a reduction in revenue due to moving that MSI LGFF grant to the levies and revenue area. The executive office is an increase in reserve transfers for legal expenses. HR, we have 30,000 for municipal internship program revenue, 104 reserve transfers to support 104 reserve transfers. 45,000 is supporting the unfunded portion of the intern project, and 60,000 to fund recruitment costs. Again, as I mentioned earlier, by putting it from reserves, if we do not spend those funds, we just don't draw the funds. Whereas if you tax for it, you've taxed for it, and now you have that revenue that goes to surplus. Under comms, there's nothing significant to note for revenue. IT, nothing significant. And building maintenance, nothing significant. Under expenses for levies and revenue, it includes the tax refund and write-off. It is increased from nil to 614,000. So, and that's the tax incentive program plus a grant in lieu, provincial grant in lieu. Previously, it was buried in the revenue, and now we're trying to be more transparent by outlining it to publicly. Under council, there's an increase in budgeted reserve transfers and 40,000 for election costs. In the finance area, for expenses, we have an increase in salaries for a new position for a municipal accountant, increase in audit fees of 30,000, increase in reserve transfer, reduction in contracted services of 30,000, and an increase of 22,000 for software improvements and public engagement. Under the executive office, we have 148,000 for records management and digitization, 77,000 increase in legal fees if required, and that's supported by a draw from reserve, and contribution to reserves. Under HR, we have 72,000 increase in salaries. Some of that is offset by grant. 70,000 increase in contracted services. Part of that is recruitment budget as well as salary survey for 2025. 51,000 is an increase in transfer to reserves. When we look at the comms communications expenses, we have an increase of 45,000 for a full year of communications officer that was partially introduced in 24, and it includes salary and benefits. Increase of 29,000 to transfer to reserves, and we've coordinated all our promotional materials into a centralized area under communications. IT, we're looking at 18,000 increase to computer programs, and we have increases in minor areas. Under building maintenance, we have 53,000 increase in reserve transfers, as well as salary increases. That's the general government area. If you want further questions on this area, I can ask the GMs to speak to it.
All right, Council, do you have any questions on this? Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the mayor, you called my name before I pushed the button. Through the mayor, to our CFO.
I know my council.
So just an overall question, not specific to this budget, just because I know it's going to keep coming. So we have 2.5% of our operating reserves in this budget. How does that compare to the reserve, the 10% desirable in our operating budget reserves? Is that 2.5% now? Just like, are we at our desired amount, or is that over a few years?
Thank you for the question through the mayor to Councillor Chachka. What has been presented in 2025? I'm thinking through a good answer for you. What we have presented in the reserve policy is to just bring forward a similar amount of 24 and present to you what the problem is with our reserves in the future. That yes, we need to increase it more, but I was hesitant to do that because that will affect the tax rate. So when you compare the total amount that we contributed in 24 compared to the amount we're contributing in 25, it is very similar. It's a little more by approximately $100,000 in 25.
Okay, so just a follow-up. So as we work towards that reserve balance of the operating budget to have 10% in each of those reserve areas, yes, thank you. Where are we at? Is that this 2.5% then means that we're at 2.5% out of that 10%, or?
Oh, no. So, thank you for the question. Now I can better explain. We have budgeted 2.5% from each department to accumulate to 10%. Once we get to the 10%, we'll reduce that 2% and likely increase the capital contribution, because we know the capital contribution will require more funds for our infrastructure. Is that fair?
Yeah, okay, thank you.
However, we will, just to support that we're bringing the information back to you on a regular basis, our hope is that when we bring forward our quarterly statements, we'll bring forward those reserve balances so you can see where they are at.
Any further questions under general government? No, you can continue on.
Okay, thank you. General government capital plan. This is the 5-year capital plan for the general government. And it identifies the individual projects we are looking at in that 5-year plan. Would you like the general managers to speak to those projects?
I think we only have one project for 2025. I don't think, Council, do you want to discuss anything in the future? No, I think we're okay.
Okay, thank you. The next slide is the Protective Services operating. Protective Services Department includes police, fire, disaster services, community enforcement, and animal pound. When we're reviewing the revenues under the policing, we have a decrease of $250,000 due to adjustment in court fines revenue to be closer to the actuals. The risk of overstating that revenue in the past would be that we wouldn't have that revenue and we wouldn't have taxed enough money to support our expenses. So it's important that we are realistic with what we expect to get. Under the fire area, we've increased the revenue by $273,000. And that includes grants of $150,000, $50,000 other grant, $40,000 for deployments, as well as $18,000 for AHA medical first response. Under disaster area for 24, The disaster recovery program from the province, you can see that our actuals is quite high. And that is likely half of the grant. They fronted 50% of it in 2023. You can see we did not budget for that money coming in 2024. So it'll be indicated when we look at our actuals for 2024. But of course, it's creating a variance for 2025. Community enforcement, there's nothing significant to note there. Animal pound, nothing significant. So then when we look at the expenses under policing, there's a decrease of 185,000, mainly due to a decrease in contracted services for global traffic and an increase in reserve transfers. 70,000 increase in cost of policing, and the balance is salary increases. Under fire, we have an increase of 369,000. It's made up of 71,000 increase to salaries in order to review the honorariums. 200,000 for expenses related to fire guard grant, and 50,000 for contractor for fire inspections. It also includes 21,000 for equipment maintenance, iPads and IT equipment of 18.7 for our trucks. Under disaster, there's nothing significant to note. We have a small increase there for parts and supplies. Number 25 is the 911 center, and there's nothing there to note. I believe that we do have some additional costs there, though. Minor reduction amount due to Yellowhead County based on historical actuals. Under community enforcement, we have 95,000 increase due to salary increases, as well as increase in reserve transfers, and 9.5 for encampment cleanups. Under animal pound, we have nothing significant to note other than the reserve transfer. The capital programs related to protective services for the 5 years are listed. I have the wrong, sorry, the next graph, that confused me. I was on a different slide. So this is our 5-year capital plan in detail for the Department of Protective Services. And so then you can see that under fire, we're looking at 4.9 million in the 5-year plan. Under disaster, we're looking at 150,000. Under community enforcement, we're looking at 38,000.
Just a clarification, those for disaster and community enforcement, that's for 2026.
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
this is the 5-year plan.
yeah. Okay, council, any questions for protective services? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Ms. McDonald. You mentioned under protective services operating community enforcement encampment cleanup. I didn't catch the amount and the details of like encampment cleanup. Is that something we've already budgeted for, or we're just seeing there's more work to be done now? We're cleaning up more encampments, and whether or not Mr. Wagstaff, it's like.
Go ahead, Mr. Wagstaff.
Yeah.
To Councillor Taylor through the chair, no, this is new. So we haven't budgeted in the past, but one of the things we're finding is that in moving those encampments along, then there's some cleanup responsibilities behind that, and we've put it into public protective services at this point.
And what was the amount?
Oh, the amount is also, had it highlighted here.
9.5. Okay, 1,000.
No, 9,500. 9,500.
9,500, sorry.
Yeah, not 9.5 million. You're okay. Well, we do have a $1.1 million vacuum, so
Yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
And so is that then to our enforcement staff to do that, or do they end up working with a contractor to help with that cleanup as well? How's that working?
Our protective services manager has found a contractor out of the city that specializes in encampment cleanups. He's also engaged Hinton, having discussions about how we could coordinate as both communities are facing, this changing dynamic, and it's coordinating with them with this contractor.
So I have a question under policing. RCMP back pay, was that not supposed to be an expense in 2025, or have we already issued funds for back pay, or how are we dealing with the back pay issue?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. RCMP retro pay should be recorded in the year that it was received, and it ends up being a liability on the balance sheet. So it's been expensed in the past. The RCMP is currently in negotiations for their future contract, and we municipalities have been advised to include 2%. At this point, I'm not sure if we have included 2% in the budget to help accommodate future negotiation results.
CO Beveridge?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your question. You are correct. March 2025 is when we had extended out our payment for the back pay. Finance, can you speak to, I believe it's put away for us and deferred. Is that correct?
That's right. So it would have been expensed in a prior year and sitting on the balance sheet as deferred. So when that payment comes out, it just comes out of out of the balance sheet. You won't see it on your actuals. It's already been expensed.
Okay, so further to that, we have our projections that have come from the RCMP outlining a number of expenses in terms of upgrading and refreshing and regreening their equipment. Are those costs already included in this budget, or have we not allocated those yet?
Those are included, and a couple of those costs we understand you'll see in the 2026 budget when we're talking about body cams in particular.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. I'm just going off memory here, but I thought in the report that we received from the RCMP, it suggested a 4%, setting aside 4%. Maybe I'm wrong, but for some reason that number sticks to my head. So if that is the case, why are we just doing 2%?
Mr. Wagstaff.
My apologies. Through the chair, Councillor Chachka, can you repeat your question, please?
Through the mayor. So in the report that we received from the RCMP, it's the one that has all the list of all the gear and goes through in detail what everything is. I thought in there it mentioned the current negotiations and that there was a recommendation to include a 4% increase to municipalities. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know why 4% sticks in my head, but I thought that was the number. And I want to make sure that we're aligning it as per their recommendation, so we're not caught later at a later date.
Go ahead, Ms. McDonald.
Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka. Thank you for the question. We will go back and review that. However, what I have seen in the past is that the RCMP put forward their actual increase and a 2% on top. So the 4% might have been for their actual year, not for future negotiations. So we'll go back and verify that and share what we found out.
All right, anything further? Seeing none, we will continue on.
Moving on to transportation services. Transportation services includes public works, fleet, roads, airport, and engineering. Under the revenue side, you will see public works has $175,000 increase. due entirely to town equipment rent to help fund the fleet purchases as a result of the depleted reserve. Roads on the revenue side has a $449,000 reduction due to a $200,000 reduction in transfer from reserves in the prior year, as well as $206,000 reduction in road frontages that was in the budget from prior years and shouldn't have been in there. And $42,000 reduction in prepaid frontages. So there was 2 of them. 33 is airport. We have 40,000 that increase mainly due to increase in the Yellowhead County cost share revenue and offset by a reduction in airport fees and fuel income to reflect historical actuals. Engineering, we have a reduction of 85,000. As in 2024 budget, we have funding for construction specs and design guidelines. Under the expense category, first of all, is Public Works. We have an increase of 217,000, explained mainly by an increase in the transfer to reserves. 20,000 is parts and supplies, and a small increase for salaries. Under roads, we have an increase of 320,000. 189 is due to increase in contracted services, and includes 100,000 for the lane paving program, 50,000 for snow removal, 25,000 for wildlife management, and the rest is trending. 75,000 increase in electricity, 90,000 increase in town equipment rent in order to support the fleet program, and 267,000 increase in the transfer to reserves. We have a reduction of 300,000 in consulting fees as the storm sewer condition assessment is complete. Under the airport area, we have 109,000 increase, and it is including reserve transfers, salaries, and 15,000 reduction in parts and supplies. Under engineering, we have 31,000 increase due to 95,000 increase in transfer to reserves, 85,000 reduction in other consulting for construction specs and design that was completed in 24, and we've included salaries costing in there. The next slide shows our capital programs for this area for the 5-year program in detail. And you can see that Public Works has 1.3 million, Airport has 3.7 million, and Engineering has a slight amount in there for 16,700. Open for questions.
Go ahead, Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to Ms. McDonald. On the airport resurfacing there, is that that'd be a shared expense with the county, would it not?
I believe so. I'll pass it to the GM.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, would be. Yeah, that's a cost share.
Mr. Mayor, is that 3.5 million our half, or is that the total project?
I believe that is a total project amount, so it isn't reflecting the cost share amount.
Go ahead.
So then that's one of those things that we need to be talking with our partner about future stuff so they can plan as well.
Absolutely, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think one of the things we're going to get in the habit of doing is these 5-year plans. We can share this with them right now, so they can see far out what we have on our books, and we can coordinate. But we have commitments in those agreements to meet with our ministerial representatives yearly, and we're doing a better job of doing that. We have met with Miles from the county a couple times already historically, so we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Chachko.
Through the chair to Councillor Pisichny. Last term we had a presentation on the airport runway, and another one in Alberta costs about $8 or $9 million. So I'm wondering if that's our half. When I read that, I assumed it was our half, but who knows?
We're going to hand things over to Mr. O'Sullivan.
So this is a re and re. Our runway is actually in very good shape. It's just this top surface cracking, and so we're doing we'd just be removing the top 2 inches or 4 inches and replacing. So that cost us down completely a lot. So we're not removing the entire runway and repaving. It's just taking off the top 2 or 4 inches.
Thank you. Any further questions, Ms. McDonald?
I apologize, there's another slide for the transportation roads.
Oh, okay.
If we go to the next slide, it shows all our construction projects under the roads area totaling 44.4 million over the 5-year plan.
So just a question through to administration. It's quite the extensive list. I don't know if we have heard any updates from Alberta Transportation regarding 2nd and 4th Avenue, Highway 16 through town. Have we done condition assessments? Do we know what we are going to need replacing on the highway corridor if they actually move forward with doing a full rehabilitation of that highway through town?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. I would say we've not done a full analysis of what that work might be to align with their work. We know that they've retained a consultant. The consultant's working on the design. We do have the contact information for the lead on the design project. But certainly, yeah, it's a good point, Mr. Mayor. We should reach out and start thinking about how we can coordinate some of our projects with their work.
Thanks for that. Councillor Pisichny?
Yeah, through the mayor to administration. I noticed on the long-range capital plan, we don't have anywhere in there for resurfacing of the Tiffin neighborhood. The asphalt in that neighborhood is starting to alligator, if that makes sense. And historically, we generally resurfaced about every after the neighborhood's become 25 to 30 years old, and that's the age of that community, that portion of the community. So I don't see it anywhere in the next 5 years, but if we let it go too long, it'll be a lot more expensive than just a resurfacing.
The same goes for the West Haven neighborhood as well. Any other further questions or comments? Councillor Chachka?
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. So I'm just looking at the Waz Creek Phase 1 and Phase 2. They're both on 2025. Did I miss the Waz Creek Phase 2 on the capital plan sheet? I'm just, maybe I'm just not reading it or something, but I didn't see it there, so.
Oops, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we don't have the years on the top of the slide. We're missing that, but Phase 2 shouldn't be next year. That's going to be after. So
Okay.
I think what it should be, this might be wrong.
I think there's two 2.5s.
Yeah, that one 2.5 should be gone. It should be, the 2.5 is 2026 and the 1.4 is 2025. So I think that's just
Just a typo.
yeah.
All right, any further questions under Transportation Services Capital Plan? All right, seeing none, we will continue on.
The next slide is our social programs and services. Social programs and services foster collaboration with the region's social agencies and play an active role in the community, providing preventative services, which builds resiliency, leads to strong, healthy, and social sustainable communities. Under the revenue area, you can see that for FCSS, we have an increase of 43,000, largely attributable to the Yellowhead cost-sharing revenues. The FCSS grant is a 80-20 share, and we have 404,760 grant versus the Addison deficit of 254,039, resulting in the split actually being 6139. Under public health, we have no change from the prior year. Under cemetery, we have nothing significant to note. And community development, we have an increase of 94,000, largely due to Yellowhead County cost sharing. Under expenses for this area, FCSS, we have 143,000 increase. Some of that is due to the transfer to reserves. 52,000 increase to contracted services. And that was for, a portion of that is for community needs assessment, and then that is offset by an increase or decrease for other services. 40,000 increase due to a new admin of wages and benefits, and that includes an admin assistant that will be split 50-50 between FCSS and the Community Development Department. Public health increases 54,000, and it's due to transfers from reserves, and 10,000 for Community Care Foundation. Under cemetery, we have nothing significant to note. We have some small items for parts and supplies, and a budget request for the tombstone monument repairs that will continue forward. Under 62, public transportation, we have 93,000 increase, and 75,000 of that increase is due to the Move Edson grant. 13,000 increase due to transfers to reserves. Community development, we have 263,000 increase, and that includes salaries, the admin assistant shared with FCSS, as well as a 44,000 increase in contracted services. And that includes a 15,000 increase for Canada Day, and 20,000 for youth interagency Marmot trip, 24,000 increase in insurance, and 47 increase in grants. That grants includes trail grooming, 10,000 for micro grants, 4,000 for youth council bursaries, 30,000 for enhanced community grants. That's a new request, as well as increase for transfers to reserves. When we look at, there's capital for that area that falls under cemetery and public transportation. Open for questions.
Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to Ms. McDonald. You mentioned an increase to the Canada Day expense. Can you just elaborate on
Yeah.
what
Let me see.
that was?
Sure. I'll
Let Mr.
allow the
Wagstaff.
GM to answer.
Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka and all of council. There's been two changes over the last couple of years that have shifted. Due to the fires in 2023, the fireworks did not occur at Canada. They were shifted to the November light up event. That was repeated in 2024 with the committee that were organizing those two events, shifted the fireworks to the fall event. This would have two fireworks events, one for Canada Day and one for the fall light up. So that's what's proposed in the budget.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to council administration, and I kind of thought that was where we were going with that discussion. So then, essentially, we would be having two sets of fireworks, is what you're saying. Okay, all right.
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, that's correct. Proposing having it twice.
Well, I don't want to certainly be a damper on fireworks, but perhaps it would be prudent at us to ask CD to just put out a survey, what people would generally want. We could have fireworks for lots of different things, for Christmas and for New Year's and birthdays and bar mitzvahs. but I think we have to be reasonable about what we're doing. And yes, I am torn. Canada Day is a bit of a tradition. However, we did have a great turnout at the November light up when we did do it. There was no snow and it was like +5. Let's see if there is snow and it's -25, what might happen. But I would be more in favor of just doing a survey. Having just one set of fireworks is that's sort of my thoughts on that. And just seeing what the general public would like to do. Whether or not we do this now, or perhaps with the mayor's, if the mayor wants to do it at the end, I'm not sure. We have a number of proposals for new positions. And I don't know about the rest of the council, but certainly I get nervous when I hear, new positions being brought up, because that's suddenly an annual increase, it's an annual expense, right? Some being needed, some need discussion, right? And I did hear one for FCSS. I heard a financial assistant earlier, and I believe there was a few other smaller positions and things like that. But I think we do need to have a full discussion about the adding into that, because that is an annual increase that we'll always look at, and it's a forever increase, right? So perhaps we'll just focus on this position, and it's going to be split between FCSS and CD. It is a full-time position. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, that is correct.
Okay. And just any funding is there any cost sharing funding, or is it 100% coming to the town of Edson to fund that position?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, it is cost shared in two ways. So the FCSS portion, and then on the CD portion, that is a cost share 30% with the county.
Okay, all right. And that concludes those questions. So then, what is the total cost then to us, to the town of Edson?
Good, Mr. Wagstaff?
Math is not my strong suit, Mr. Mayor, so I have the final number here. Can I get back to council on the breakdown percentage? Because I have the total number here, but I would have to do that calculation.
No problem. Thank you. Math is not my strong suit either, so that's why I teach drama.
Thank you for the question, through the mayor to Councillor Taylor. 40,000 is the admin shared between FCSS, 50% between FCSS and CD. So CD would be, portion would be taxpayer. FCSS, I'd argue that we're over our 80-20 share for FCSS. So though it would be part of the sharing, we're already over. So this would be additional cost to the bottom line.
So total cost for the town of Edson taxpayer? Do we have that number?
That would be, I would argue that it would be 40,000.
Yep. Any other further questions? So you mentioned a $75,000 increase for moving Edson for operational. What is that all entailing? I don't know, Councillor Pisichny, if you can speak to that at all, or Mr. Wagstaff.
To the mayor and all of council, that was a request from Moving Edson. What it is doing is it is supporting. They have added some staff with the expanded scope that they are providing for the community. I would suggest that from an administration's point of view, the return of value we get for it is significant. If we were trying to staff it ourselves as compared to staffing it through Moving Edson, it would be significantly higher as part of our discussion that had just happened. But that's what they're doing. They also are shifting as they've grown. They've moved from being an organization that has been operating out of a home-based business in the county to trying to have some more frontage with the community and adding staff to support that depth in their programming that they're providing to, or the service they're providing to the community.
Go ahead, Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, just further to that, we have the organization expanded a lot. It used to be Monday to Friday, and it was 8 to 4, and now we have evening service and Saturday services. They expanded the net program. They have an office now. So it's growing exponentially. So it's just a lot of the ask is just because we want to make sure that it's successful. And we don't want it to be running short where they're struggling to survive. So
Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, through the mayor to council, I'm supportive of that funding. And I think Mr. Wagstaff alluded to that. I'm sort of alluded to it earlier. We can't lose this organization. It's an organization that's needed within our community. And if we ever had to take this over, I think Councilor Pacici brought this up kind of earlier, the cost will be exponentially more. It would be $350,000, it'd be $400,000 to us to run this service. So this is an easy yes for me.
Councillor Trauchka?
Thanks. Through the mayor to Mr. Wagstaff. Just looking for clarity. I believe in the past we've paid for the insurance, I think, for them, and gas expense as well. Is that still continuing?
Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka, in the past, we've had $66,000. The increase is to $125,000.
Go ahead, Councillor Pacici.
yeah, originally it was the equivalent of fuel and insurances. And if you remember, we increased the grant a little while ago. All those have gone up. Insurances have gone up, fuels have gone up, everything has gone up. So this is to increase it to an area where they have some buffer to add into their operating, not just covering those expenses.
Through as the council rep on moving Edson, Councillor Pacici, are there services expanded out to the county at all, or are these primarily Town of Edson riders on the bus? Because we are seeing an increase. I'm not saying I'm not in support of it, but I don't think Town of Edson taxpayers should be subsidizing services out into the county if we are providing a service that they're not contributing to. So can you speak to that?
Like the occasional short trip into the county, it's not to the level they do in town. I think the biggest, I don't have the stats in front of me. We do have the ridership stats. They don't go into the county, it's just too far. And it's a call service, so people call, the bus will come, and then they can spend too much time in the county. So it's not that people can't come into town and use the bus, but I don't think they spend a lot of time in the county.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
What I can do is get you the ridership stats, because everything is tracked, every single ride.
Sounds good. Council, any other questions or comments? All right, we will move on.
The next slide covers our recreation, parks, and culture groups together. It includes Parks, Leisure Center, Griffith Park, and Culture Services. Under the revenue area, Community Services Administration, there's nothing significant to report. It's increasing mainly due to the Yellowhead County cost-sharing revenue. For parks, we have a decrease of $75,000 in the revenues due to a change between the years. $75,000 was a transfer from reserves in 2024. Under Griffiths Park, we have nothing significant to note. Reduction in federal grants from a one-time grant for soundproofing in the past, and it's offset by an increase for internal department rent. Leisure Center, we have a $132,000 increase, and that covers the transfer to reserves or from reserves, $20,000 transfer from reserves, $104,000 increase into the Yellowhead County cost share. For cultural, there's nothing significant to note. The reduction is entirely related to the Yellowhead County cost share. When we look at the expenses in this area, Community Services Admin has an $81,000 reduction due to $24,000 allocation of salaries, reallocation of salaries. So we moved positions around and charged them out differently, and has resulted in a reduction in this area. $19,000 reduction in contracted services. Part of that is connected community initiatives, and 7,500 truth and reconciliation, 5,000 for homelessness. 57,000 is a reduction in consulting services. That was in 2024, and we have a 24,000 increase to transfer to the reserves. Under parks, we have 107,000 increase. 104 of that is to cover salary, wages, and benefits, and it includes a new operator and 2 summer students. 10,000 reduction in facility repairs, 35,000 reduction in contracted services. And it's offset by 10,000 increase in snow removal, 15,000 increase in arborist, and nominal changes to other contracts. 22,000 reduction in parts and supplies, 25,000 increase in the transfer to reserves, and 19,000 increase in internal rent equipment. Griffiths Park, nothing significant really to note other than 10,000 decrease overall. Leisure Center, we have 344,000 increase. 135 is for salaries coverage, as well as some guest service enhancements and an arena supervisor that was approved in the 2023 but excluded in budgeting for in 2024. So the variance shows up in this year. 153,000 increase in transfer to reserves, 25,000 increase in electricity, 20,000 chemicals. When we look at the cultural, it has a 212 reduction, 300,000 reduction for grants. In 2024, there was a one-time grant to the Yellowhead Agriculture Society, and that's offset by an increase for the transfer to reserves. We'll look at the capital for that area. You can see that the parks here over the 5-year plan has 3.1 million. Griffiths Park has 108,000, and the next page shows Leisure Center for the multiplex is the major component there of 80 million. Open for questions.
Right, council, do you have any questions regarding this? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Under operating under community services admin, I hate to do this. Could you just, there was certainly an Indigenous section in there, and there was a couple other things that I was frantically trying to write down and only heard about a third of it. Do you mind just repeating just a couple of the key items under there about that
Okay.
item there, please?
Does the GM want to answer that directly, or do you want me to repeat it?
Well,
Yeah, I can repeat it.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the question through the chair to Councillor Taylor. I'm looking for it. Sorry. I had it there for 2 seconds. Here it is. 30,000 budget for connected community initiatives, reduced to 12.5. 7,500. Sorry, I'm looking at short form, trying to translate it. 7,500 for truth and reconciliation, 5,000 for homelessness.
Sorry, thank you.
Councillor Trask.
Thanks, through the chair to administration. So under the parks expense, Ms. McDonald mentioned 1 new operator and 2 new summer students. Can we just get a little bit more details on what that looks like?
I'll pass that to the GM.
GM Kitlitz.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll start with the 2 summer students. So I think council recalls that historically in the winter, summer operations, we will steal a couple of staff from the leisure center to help out with parks over the summer. It's proving to be a little bit challenging. So what happens is, because those are full-time employees, they tend to take a vacation time during that time. So we end up not having them full-time anyway. And there's also, work that they still need to do at the leisure center. And we're finding I guess what we're finding is that that's not working out the way it worked out for a while, but it's not working as well as we thought. So our plan is to leave those 2 employees at the leisure center to help with maintenance and operations at the leisure center over the summer, and replace them with 2 summer students that we can add to our fleet. Is what the plan is. The cost for those is about $32,000 a year, but I think we can apply for some funding to offset some of that. I don't know the details of that. I apologize, but that's what the cost is there. So we just found that arrangement, it wasn't working as well as it had in the past. So some adjustments there. And then the parks operator. So quite some time ago, back in, I think it was 18, I guess maybe, there was a total of 5 parks operators, but through some reorg, we kind of lost one. Reno was promoted and we never backfilled that parks operator position. So we're trying to get that back up to snuff. Vision Park's coming back online. It's a massive piece of park area to maintain. So it's just about trying to maintain those same service levels. We also have, now that Parks is at the airport, there's some advantages there to have some support for Keith at the airport. So we're trying to build that up as well. So it's just, again, we're falling behind and we're trying to keep up with those service levels. So we're asking for an extra operator to continue that. We're also going to look at, in the future, potentially proposing a shift for Parks so that we can have weekend coverage. So we're trying to build towards that as well.
And I believe GM Wagstaff wants to supplement.
Yeah, through the mayor to all of council, to add to what GM Kitlitz has said, we took a look at the service levels we had in parks, in the leisure center, as well as culture with community development and the events in the summer, and recognized that we could, with an input of 2 summer students, we could support all 3 of those operations better, not only in the leisure center, but also then during the events. It was easier and more efficient for us to utilize full-time staff to support some of those events that are going on for setup and takedown. So it impacted 3 divisions when we were able to look at it and inject 2 low-cost employees with summer students.
Councilor Pisichny?
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor to administration. I'm not sure who is going to answer this, but it's a 2-part question, and I have one is, where's our EOC? Which building do we have it in?
Mr. Wagstaff?
Through the mayor to Councillor Pisichny, right now, I would use the terminology ad hoc would be in this room right here. We are looking at different facilities currently with Public Works building in particular, to kind of focus in on what would be needed in enhancing that. So that's what we're looking at. You did see in the 5-year capital plan on Griffiths Park, that's going to be shifted because that was to support an ECC. But we believe there's some other spaces we can better utilize. But for right now, the long and short of it is we would use this room right here.
Okay, now the reason for my question is we have an EOC upgrades back in protective service capital along with a backup generator for the EOC, and we didn't identify where that's going. Then we're also looking at putting a backup generator at Griffiths Park. I'm not sure why we would need a backup generator for $100,000 at Griffiths Park. Doesn't make any sense to me. We don't have that big of power problems in Edson. So I guess my question would be, I know we put with a fire, makes sense. It's an emergency services building, and our EOC would require a backup generator, and that makes sense to me too. But where is the EOC? And we don't need backup generators at all the town buildings. That doesn't make any sense to me why we would be looking, I guess it's 2026, but for a backup generator at Griffiths Park. It doesn't make any sense to me. So.
Mr. Wagstaff?
Through the mayor to Councillor Pisichny, you're correct in that observation. We have not identified exactly where, and it's only one backup generator if that's what's required. That's why we put it in the capital plan, but it's not for both. If the ECC was going to be at Griffiths Park, that would be a project to help enhance that, but it will be where the ECC decides to go is what we're looking at.
Go ahead, Councilor Pisichny.
Yeah, so just because it's showing up in 2 different line items, right? Because if you go through protective services capital plan, there's $100,000, and if I go to recreation parks culture capital plan, there's $100,000. So that's $200,000 in generators. So is it, if it's an EOC, it should just remain under as an EOC backup drainer, no matter where we're gonna put that, and then drop the $100,000 off of the Parks and Culture capital plan. Does that make sense?
It does, correct.
Okay, I just, cause to me, it's like we have it doubled
Thank you,
up.
Councilor Pistachini. Thank you. Moving on. Council, any further questions, comments on that? Go ahead, Ms. McDonald.
I'd like to correct that the position, the admin position, that was only half of the salary, right? That was 50%, not the full position. So the full position is 71,000.
Okay.
That's shared between the two departments.
Yeah, okay.
However, we can circle back at a later, once we get to the bottom, maybe we'll circle back to the positions. I certainly don't want to give the impression that I'm not supportive of staff if there's a requirement in the department, especially FCSS. I just have concerns with that 80-20 split, and I feel responsible to ensure that council is aware that there is an 80-20 split, and we're already spending more than our 20% requirement.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Taylor?
Yeah, through the mayor to Mr. Wagstaff. We have sort of two questions, I guess. We have $7,500 reduced with regards to Indigenous work, and I know a lot of work has been done as a part of our strat plan with regards to that. And then is the $5,000 for homelessness, is that a new cost or is that an ongoing cost that we've had in the past? And I'll swing back to the Indigenous, I guess, statement in a minute.
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, in the past, it had been budgeted for $30,000. So we took a look at what activities we've been doing and supporting, and we believe that can be reduced down to $12,500.
Okay. So with that, and I just throw this out here, I know the schools have been taking access of a major local business in town that provides like a part-time contracted staff to work with the schools on Indigenous work. And I can say that's been happening in our Indigenous Studies program. And some indirect conversations, this is something that we might be able to take use of in terms of that. And I'll give you the information on that. But it's been very valuable for our school and schools in the region from Drayton Valley to, I think, Hinton, the person goes to. So is what we can do there. And the $5,000 for homelessness, what usually entails out of that? What are we usually spending our money within that?
We don't have through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, we don't have a direct plan, but we do recognize both with task force work and the ongoing emerging issues we have around homelessness in the community, that we prudently need to be prepared to look into that and spend some time, which is money as well. So we've earmarked $5,000 to do some work in that space.
Go ahead, Councilor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. Just a quick question. So it's on the 5-year plan, and I'll at the end I'll ask some other questions for discussion, but just looking for some clarity on the outdoor rinks. We've got Griffiths, Tiffin, and West Haven in 27, 28, and 29. There's some dollar figures listed there. Is that for full rehabilitation, or are they just for adding a few extra boards? Just looking for clarity on what that is intended to be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, admittedly, so we're as CEO Beveridge mentioned earlier in the meeting, we're learning and we're continuing to develop our capital planning. A lot of times for me, when I hear something, I want to get it on the list. So to me, it's more important to get something on the list, and if it's further out, admittedly, some of these numbers are just shots in the dark, and some of them are just, and some of them we do have data for. So if it's far out to 27, 28, admittedly, those numbers probably aren't as well thought out as they should be. But for me, it's about getting something on the list so we won't forget it. So I think the intention is that those are full rebuilds, right? Like what we did with Glenwood Rink, but certainly those numbers could use some refinement for sure. And as CEO Beveridge mentioned, we will continue to grow and refine our capital planning, but we just don't want to lose them. Yeah.
Councilor Taylor.
Through the mayor to administration, With regards to the rinks that Councillor Chachka brought up, we did have a plan in 2024 to work with community residents in terms of upgrading some of the rinks, and just wondering if we had an update on that work. I know we budgeted money and where we had gone with that. Yeah, just an update there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't want to get into too much details right now, but we are working on a bit of a plan here this fall, hopefully before it frees up, with some local businesses and the community groups to do a little bit of refurbishment on Tiffin and West Haven. But until we've got a little bit more solidified there, I don't want to share too much because we're still working with them. But we're working on something. Fingers crossed, we'll spend a little bit of time and effort on those 2 rinks before it frees up.
All right, council, any further questions on these items? So just further to Councillor Taylor's question regarding homelessness, $5,000 seems like a small pittance with some of the challenges that we're facing in the homelessness area. I guess I know the task force is doing a lot of work in the background. I think that we heard through the business walk that homelessness is a huge concern for businesses in the downtown core. Do we have any sort of plan or mitigation efforts to deal with some of the challenges that we're facing with homelessness? I know that enforcement services, I see them often every morning having to move people along and that sort of thing. I don't know if you can speak to that, Mr. Wagstaff.
To the mayor and through the mayor to all of council, yes, and that would come in a different area. So that this $5,000 we're referring to is if we see a conference come up or we're doing some work with the task force that at this point in time isn't planned for, but we recognize that those things will likely emerge. But the efforts that we're doing around in the homelessness piece around protective services, both with policing and our enforcement services, there is a program available that called Agent. So it's a program that we are looking into where it currently trespass, petty trespass is on public lands is clearly within a realm of an ease for our police and enforcement services to deal with. Where it becomes a little more complicated is when they're on private lands. But the agent program does allow for enforcement agencies to work and get pre-approval with private landholders, businesses in particular, to be able to act on their behalf. So that is something we're more than exploring. We're at a point of exploring it, so having an implementation plan. But that's something that's just emerged since our enforcement services manager was at a conference with regards to homelessness and encampments. Conversations at Alberta Munis that the CAO brought back as well to say that this plan is out there in some other communities. It seems to be having some success, and it's something we would like to implement here. So we're in the early stages of getting that ready to bring forward to council and the community.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I don't want to get too deep into this as we're in budget, but so with the agent program, would there be a cost to the municipality? Or we don't have that information yet, and what I'm hearing you saying is basically that would allow our policing and enforcement services to be more proactive instead of reacting to a call for service.
To the mayor, through the mayor to all of council, that is correct. It would be more proactive of a program. That's the evaluation we're doing right now is there a cost outside of time? But we intend on being able to bring that to council very soon and share with council and the community more details on that program.
All right, thank you, Councillor Taylor.
And through the mayor, I agree. I don't want to go too far down this path, but just to say, I would also like to see it maybe bring this past the task force as well, just to hear from the task force itself regarding the program and how it can be used, and if it's a valid way of dealing with the issue or mitigating some of the issues we're having. So.
All right, we'll move on.
Thank you, Council. The next slide is regarding planning and economic development. The revenues under planning has increased $169,000 to fund the municipal development plan from reserves. $50,000 for orthophoto, or no, sorry, it's a little different here. Orthography update from reserves, and 60,000 for planning contractor to, supported by reserves. In 2024, we had the land use bylaw that's being offset, it's creating a variance between 24 and 25. And in 24, we have 100,000 housing strategy. Those are areas from reserve. Economic development, we have 264,000 increase, and that includes 60,000 for rural revenue stream applications and 100,000 rural development and promotion grant, 50,000 for LMP provincial grant, and 50,000 NRED, which is Northern Regional Economic Development Program. When we're looking at this expenses for this area, planning has 271,000 increase, 63,000 increase in consulting services, 200,000 for the municipal development plan update, less 100,000 housing strategy, and 42,000 land use bylaw that was in the prior year. 111,000 increase for contracted services, and that covers the orthography as well as contracting to support the planning area with consulting fees. Under economic development, we have advertising increase of 42,000, and that includes influencers, attraction, and investment, as well as a welcome program. Interactive community map, and the traditional advertising is included in that. Under contracted services, we have an increase of 50,000, and other items. I think I've already spoke to. The ambassador program is 10,000 grant dependent. Main Street beautification is 10,000 grant dependent. Invest Edson 10,000. And healthcare recruitment, 20,000. Oh, sorry, we removed the healthcare recruitment. Sorry, I shouldn't have that in my notes. And then there's no capital requirement from planning and economic development, so open to questions for this department.
Council, any questions? So when it comes to planning and development, I'll just make sure I'm getting the right area here. Nope, not yet. All right, I'll save my question till later.
Okay, should I move on to environmental services? So environmental services includes water, wastewater, which is sewer, waste collection, waste management, which is landfill and recycling. We have made budget improvements that are reflected in the year-to-year changes. Under revenues for water, there's not a significant change amount. However, we have 40,000 reduction as a result of adjusting the actuals to more accurately reflect what we will get. We have decreases slightly due to consumption billing. Noted in most municipalities, the consumption of water is going down due to a number of efficiencies in washing machines, dishwashers, and so municipalities are feeling that their consumption rate is going down. And so that's having an impact on our numbers also. Under sewer, we have a 99,000 reduction. Part of it is utility sales. And again, it's just adjusting to more actual numbers that we will collect. And in prior year, we had a 200,000 from the offsite levy reserve, and so that's showing up as a variance because we're not drawing that out this year. For waste collection, we have $24,000 increase. And for landfill, we have 354,000 increase. And a part of that increase is the Yellowhead cost sharing and an increase from transfers from reserves and 50,000 reduction in the landfill revenue to better reflect the actuals. For recycling, we have 13,000 increase, nothing significant to note on that. When we look at expenses, for water, we have a $30,000 overall reduction, and a reduction in our transfer to reserve. So remember when we looked at the three pillars, taxation, utilities, and land, our revenues are our departments are netted to zero. So any additional money earned on the revenue side is a contribution to reserves. So if our revenues are down, our contribution to reserves go down slightly. So where was I? Sewer? Did I do sewer? I lost. Okay, sewer. 99,000 reduction overall. 50,000 included an increase for the backflow sump program, and a decrease in the transfer to reserves, a decrease in utility consumption, utility costs, sorry, and 28,000 decrease in insurance. Also, we have 485 debenture principal paid. Waste collection, 24,000 increase, mainly due to an increase in contracted services. And landfill, we have 25,000 decrease. And we've increased the contracted services, but offset it by a decrease in the transfer to reserves. Recycling, we've noting recycling 13,000 increase due to transfer to reserves. When we look at the capital projects in this area, you can see that we have underwater 9.5 million over the 5-year plan. And when we look at wastewater or sewer, we have 20.5 million over the 5-year program for a total in this department of 30 million. Open for questions.
Council, any questions? Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to administration, just item 45 under operating recycling, just to refresh, that is for the Edson District Recycling Depot, that is correct. So are we then taking into account the reduction that we're going to see in terms of working with the EPR?
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So not yet. So obviously right now we're still under contract with EDRS, the same as always. That contract contemplates a 2% increase yearly, so that's been reflected in the budget. The contracts for EPR, I think, are due by the end of November at their current schedule. So we're going to know probably for spring budget adjustments what that change is going to be. So we'll be negotiating a new contract with EDRS probably Q1 of 2025. And for spring budget, we'll bring back alternate numbers for that because we just don't know what they are right now. So status quo, but we are anticipating a change coming as a spring budget adjustment.
Follow up, Councillor Taylor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Chachka.
Okay, well, I don't know what his follow-up is, so I will ask my thing. So through the chair to administration. So I guess, So earlier you mentioned our utility self-sustaining strategy. And I know a couple years ago, we increased our water and sewer rates beyond our regular operating budget to kind of contribute towards that capital savings, right? And I'm just wondering how that is in here, what that looks like, and if we're working towards that self-sustaining strategy, how that 9.5 million and that 20 million play. So it just big overall question.
Through the chair to Councillor Chachka, yes, good questions. And maybe what we will do is go back to that 3 pillars graph. So let me find it. If I understand your question correctly, you're asking the amount we're contributing and the 5-year plan for the utilities? Yes? Okay. So let's go to slide 30, 37, 38 is the capital. So this graph shows our transfers to reserves. You can see here our transfers for utilities is 1.5. We are, as I was able to break out the operating of this area. So if you go back to slide 36, you will see the operations for utilities there. The utility operations and how much we're contributing to reserves for that. It doesn't really, while we've focused on that, this is the first step to self-sustainability for the future. So we're able to adjust to make sure that we are netting to zero, but we're not in a position to cover all those expenses for the future. And so has to be considerable amount of work in 2025 determining what are our true costs in here and how do we evaluate the revenues to support those true costs for those future infrastructure. So when I was able to develop this funding section for utilities includes water, sewer, as well as waste management. And when I looked at the waste management wasn't earning enough revenue to cover its expenses. And so that's why we have decreases in that area for we either had to increase the revenue or we had to decrease the expenses to balance it to zeros, and it wasn't able to support some of its transfers to reserves, so we had to draw money out to support it. So that's balanced for this year, but that in no way addresses the future requirements of this area. And additionally, I would say that there are considerable amount of administrative overhead that happens under the taxation area and is expensed under the taxation area that should be allocated over to utilities that currently isn't there, which would drive our expenses up even more. As well as when we do a infrastructure road rehab, we're not only doing the road work, we're also digging down and replacing the water and sewer lines, and that should be expensed to the utilities area. And currently, our practice is not to do that. Not that it was a poor practice, it was just a practice of the day. So now if we start splitting those costs up, we'll have a better idea to come back to council and say, okay, how are we going to address these problems for the future? Because otherwise our reserves are going down substantially. And maybe what we could go back to do is go revisit that reserve graph for you and break it down into these areas: taxation, utilities, and land division, so that you can identify, even at this current state, what kind of money do we have available for those $9 million in projects, because the money is just not there. And will we have grants to support it? Perhaps that would be maybe the feds and the province will come up with some new grants that we can apply for, but right now it's concerning for sure.
Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to Mr. Kidlitz to swing back to the EPR thing from whenever that was. And just when we look at the negotiating back with EDRS, because I think some of the things are still, they're hazardous materials. I don't think metal was still in there that I can't remember all. I remember hazardous was perhaps the biggest one and maybe one of the more expensive ones. Just ensuring that process that you, in terms of negotiation is I don't know. I just don't want EDRS to say, "Oh, we're only taking $10 off what you owe." You know, we actually thoroughly go through and do some background work in terms of knowing how much those materials actually are and how much we should be paying.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think from what I understand from EPR, the producers are going to make sure that obviously from their perspective, they're not going to pay for things that they don't need to pay for, right? They're going to be quite frugal in their assessments. So EDRS is going through a lot of work right now to give them the data that they need to determine what that offer is going to be. The challenging part is because we've opted out and they're gonna provide EDRS with an offer, in a contract to say, we're gonna cover this much of your recyclables and household hazardous waste. And whatever that offer is, then they come back to us and we renegotiate our contract to say, okay, here's what's left over, and we're paying for this much. So that's kind of how it's gonna work. Lots to do yet, for sure, so we'll see what it looks like. Yeah, okay.
All right, we can move on.
Thank you. The next slide is on land and subdivision. So land division is a self-supported department, and its costs reflect a speculative sale, as well as it includes funding for maintaining the vacant properties of approximately $30,000 and contracting for an infrastructure assessment of $50,000. There is no capital work in this area. Open for questions?
My question, Hillendale. So this, I know this has been a struggle for us for 7 years. I've been talking about what are we doing to sell lots in Hillendale, and quite frankly, we're doing nothing. We need to make a decision to try to get some development going in that subdivision. If we want to talk about tax revenue, we cannot continue to have our budgets increase at the pace that they're increasing without having development, because those costs are borne on the existing taxpayers. And we have 90 lots out there that have been sitting vacant. I don't know if we had any land sales in the last 12 months or not. There's been over the years, a number of reasons why we've ran into specific challenges, from COVID to the economy to we were waiting for a land use bylaw. That land use bylaw update has now happened. So in 2025, what are we doing to get lots moving in Hillendale? Are we reducing prices? Are we advertising? We have to, doing the same and getting the same result is not an acceptable thing for me. So we need to come up with some sort of plan. And I know we're working on a housing strategy. Maybe that ties into it a little bit as well. But we can't continue on for another 10 years sitting on a whole bunch of empty lots. It's just not acceptable. So I guess I'm throwing that big bomb out there and see if administration has any feedback. CO Beveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Message received. We understand. We have come to you with different ideas in the past where we've said, well, maybe we can try this. One of the things when we really talked about the Hillendale subdivision this year, it has been a considerable amount of time since this subdivision was built. We need to understand the condition of the pipes before we start trying to sell this land. In my view, I think it's irresponsible not to take a look and see what infrastructure below ground, where that stands before we start to try to sell lots. Once that, and that is within this budget, to do the condition assessment. From that, we have a situation where our economic development officer is ready, willing, and able, and wanting to. We're positioned to be able to come up with these strategies. That's the reality. Unfortunately, it's been, and your list of I'll call them, circumstances. There's also been the capacity issue as well. But that is the strategy towards this property. Am I promising anything for 2025 that we'll be able to turn the corner on this? I can't say for certain. When we have the data in front of us when it comes to our condition assessment, that will help. And then also having economic development, focusing on what council wants us to focus on, that's a key priority for us.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to the mayor and the rest of council, and I think you mentioned this, the housing strategy or the housing study or whatever it is, it has to be key to what we're doing. And I think that you throw that question out there, what are we doing? Not until we get that study. That study's going to hopefully give us the data we need to address what kind of housing we need to provide in that area and throughout town, what our needs are. Could help with the homelessness task force as well in terms of housing strategies or transitional homes. I'm really anxious to get this study back and to give us some data and some guidance about where we can go. And again, I hear your frustrations, Mayor Zahara, about Hillendale Phase 2. It's, you know, that area's been, we had a debenture, it was $9 million, I believe, at the time. Long since paid off, and, you know, now we're trying to sell these lots and just get some money back, right? On a side note, it's a great place to teach your kid how to drive. There you go.
Councillor Chachka.
Thanks, through the chair to administration. Sorry, I just lost my thought with the driving thing. That is really great. With the Hillendale strategy, right before COVID hit, which is I think before you guys were here, council had I think it's a buy now, pay later strategy, and we were planning on, you know, hitting the ground middle of March of 2020, and then of course COVID hit like the week before. We still did it, but it just didn't have the same results as we were thinking. So I have had contractors approach me about that because I think it had a couple year term on that. And I've said, like, you know, come talk to administration, right? Like, have a discussion, you know, we'll work with you. But maybe in the absence of having that available to like do online, you know, if it's not an active program, maybe they're a little reluctant for that. I don't know if it's worth bringing back that program and you know, for a 1 year basis, just to, if it's online and available, then they can go look, and then maybe they feel more comfortable starting that conversation instead of coming to administration talking about a program that they don't really know what it's about. They just remember hearing about it, you know, a few years ago. So that's an opportunity, because I think once we get that housing strategy, is my understanding, the houses that can be built in Hillendale are based on what the land use bylaw has said that they are allowed to build in that location. So unless we change the zoning, the houses, you know, there's already a type of house that you're able to build on those locations.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka, the housing strategy might also give us assistance on how to build those houses, whether or not we should build them. And some places are looking at now prefab homes built essentially in factories. We've seen them built throughout towns that if you didn't know they were prefab homes, you wouldn't know, right? And that can give us some guidance on that. It's easier to build a house in a factory than it is to try to build out in the elements now, we're finding. So, and that came up at Alberta Munis, and certainly in one of the sessions that came out. So that strategy may be beneficial in terms of not the type of home, but how it can be constructed and how we can expedite things.
All right. Anything else on planning or land sales? Seeing none, we'll move on.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just to recap, now that we've gone through the departments in detail, we can recap the positions being added. So the list that I have is an accountant for finance, GIS summer student in engineering, admin assistant that will be cost shared between FCSS and CD, community development, equipment operator for parks, 2 summer students for parks, and a municipal intern that's grant supported. I will also say that summer students are a good choice because typically I think the name has changed. It used to be the STEP program that will support after you've hired them to support the cost of that, and those aren't full-time ongoing positions. If you want individual costs for that, I'll have to get Tyler to add the costs for those positions.
Okay, Tyler, if you would mind going, Mr. Goble, through that. Great.
Thank you. So I guess we'll just start at the top with the municipal accountant position for finance. So we've tried to do a more comprehensive budgeting for salaries and wages for new positions, realizing that when we hire new people, the costs extend beyond just what they see on their paycheck. There's additional things like professional development, staff development, computer equipment, and computer licensing. So for the accountant, we're advertising a salary of about $92,000 with total benefits of $24,000. This would come along with professional development of $2,000 a year, appreciating that this successful candidate will likely be pursuing their CPA designation or will be a designated accountant themselves. And as with, and with that carries a mandatory annual professional development cost to maintain that licensing. Staff development, which seems to be it's a standard budget we have for every one of our staff of $250, as well as computer equipment. So I've spoken with Giles and our IT to kind of come up with a budget. You know, if somebody started on day one and they needed a computer and monitors and all those types of things, this type of position would come with a cost of about $2,560, as well as additional licensing fees. So the total cost, including salaries and wages and all those other things that I had noted, would be about $121,000. The GIS summer student is a little bit more of a simple explanation. We base that on the current union rate of $22.14 an hour, working 680 hours, which is 40 hours a week over 17 weeks in the summer. So total benefits and wages on that is $16,448. And with positions like this, there's things like staff development that'll be added as well. And there are small things like licensing as well. So having a Microsoft 365 license, everybody, I think we're moving towards everybody having a town email address. So if they have to sign up for safety training or things like that, they can use a town email address. So there is an additional cost to that. So the total cost of the town, including all those additional benefits, would be $16,854. The administrative assistant in FCSS and community development, that brings with it, so that's based on a union salary. We budget generally top of band for a lot of these positions, just because we don't know exactly what type of candidate we're going to get and where they're going to be placed on that grid. So currently the top salary grid for an administrative assistant is $34.89, based on the current union agreement. And that's based on 1,820 hours a year. So it's 35 hours a week times 52 weeks. So that brings us to a salary of $63,500, total benefits of $19,000. And along with this, we have a standard professional development budget for most staff of $1,000, unless they have additional professional requirements. An additional $250 for staff development and a computer setup of about $2,200 and licensing of another $450. So this total position would actually cost the town about $86,700. The parks operator, again, we're budgeting on top of the band, which is a $36 an hour wage. And I believe they work, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they work 40-hour weeks. So their annual hourly requirement is a little bit higher at 2,080 hours, which brings out a salary of about $75,000 annually and $21,300 in benefits. Then along with the standard $1,000 professional development, $250 for staff development, and then some marginal licensing costs would bring us to about $97,700. The two summer students will be very, actually identical to the GIS summer student, in that they make the same hourly wage, $22.14, working 680 hours. So each of those positions would be about $16,500 plus additional benefits, so $16,800 for each of those positions. And then the municipal intern, although this is partially funded, $30,000 in 2025 and $30,000 in 2026. So in 2025, the salary is $54,000 plus benefits of about $17,000. And then some of the things I mentioned before, $1,000 for PD, $250 for staff development, $2,200 for computer equipment, and about $500 for licensing, which brings us up to $75,000 total costs. However, that's netted by the $30,000 grant that I had just previously noted. So the net cost of the town on that would be actually $45,000. And then since it's an 18-month internship in year 2, we'd have basically just 50% of that cost. So I won't go through the same detail, but most of the things would exist there, except for the computer equipment purchase wouldn't obviously happen in year 2. So the total cost of that position would be $37,600 and would be partially offset by an additional $30,000 grant we would receive that year. So the total cost of that position to the town over 2 years, net of grants, would be just about $52,000. And we plan on funding, as we had noted when we went through the departmental budgets, would be funded by reserves. So there would be no net impact to the tax rate for those.
And if I can add to that, we did that purposely in the event that if we were not successful in the program, we didn't want to affect the tax rate.
All right, thank you. Council, any questions on the positions? Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration. I know we've talked about this in the past with the roads and the tar goop machines that fills in all the cracks. The crack sealers, I think, is what we call them. Are either of these summer students helping out with that? Did we find that we were able to achieve enough coverage on the roads between last year and this year? And yeah, so I guess I'm just asking, are the summer students helping support that? And do we require any extra support there?
Go ahead, GM Kitlitz.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I think the last 2 years, I think we've added 4 summer students to roads, if I'm not mistaken. There was 2 and then 2 again. They are helping out with the programs. These 2 summer students are for parks specifically, not for roads. So they're to offset the staff we're losing from the leisure center with weed whacking and garbage picking and watering flowers and lawn mowing in parks.
Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
So just a follow-up. So are we still going to continue getting summer students for the roads as well?
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
3 years, so yeah, we haven't, we're still keeping those positions.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments? All right.
Thank you, Council. Yes, now we can go into the impact, the budget impact and summary area. So this is a residential impact. Looking at 3 values of homes, a $25,000 home, $35,000 home, and a what did I saying? I'm getting all mixed up. $250,000, $350,000, and $450,000 home. Comparing what each house would have paid in 2024, and then holding the requisition for education and Evergreens Foundation the same, determines the impact of the property owner. So a $250,000 home would experience a $6 per month increase. $350,000 would increase $8 a month, and a $450,000 home would increase $10 a month. When we look at the non-residential on the next graph, we broke it up into 3 examples: $500,000 property, $1.5 million property, and a $2 million property. And comparing each one of these properties to what they paid in 2024, holding the education and Evergreens Foundation constant, the impact would be, for a $500,000 property, we would be looking at $12 per month. 1.5 million would increase by $34 a month, and a $2 million property would look at $46 per month. When we look at the impact of the residential utility on the next slide, we've broken it down into consumer, what they consume for water. So a low consumer would experience a 10 cubic meters, and they would result in a $6 increase per month. A median consumer would be a 25 cubic meters, and they would experience $11.92 per month. A high consumer would experience $25.50 per month, and this covers water, wastewater, consumption, administration, wastewater treatment plant and storm, as well as waste and recycling on the utility invoice. The next slide is a non-residential impact of those rate increases. And we looked at 3 areas again. A low consumption would be a retail store or an office building. A median consumer would be a restaurant or a small grocery store. And a high-end consumer would be more industrial, car wash, hospital, hotel, where we determined an average consumption would be approximately 850 cubic meters. So a low end would experience $5.77 per month increase. A medium consumption would increase $32, approximately $33 per month, and a higher end consumer would be $331 per month. Then we looked at the landfill tipping fees. So currently the landfill tipping rates are $61 per ton. And residents of Edson, Yellowhead County, and outside regions are all charged the same fee. An increase in approximately 3% to match the regional landfill rates from 61 per ton to 64 per ton. Would increase the town revenue by approximately $11,400. This fee would be charged to residents of the town of Edson. This fee would be charged to the residents of the town of Edson and the Yellowhead County. For residents outside of Edson and the Yellowhead County region, would be charged a separate rate of $80 per ton, which would be in line with comparable municipalities. This separate fee class would increase the town's revenues by approximately $16,000. Overall increase to town revenue results in a change in the landfill tipping fee and fee structure totaling $27,400. The last item on the taxation user fees, we've increased it approximately 3% in various user fee categories, including user fee general, sale of goods, penalties, licenses, and permits, but excluding the leisure center user fees. To account for the inflation would increase the town's revenues by approximately $28,500. The leisure center user fees will include a 3% increase for inflation effective September 1st, 2025. This change in fees will increase the town revenues by approximately $5,300. Overall, the increase to the town revenues would be $33,800. Our summary and next steps would include this is council's opportunity to provide direction on the 4% tax levy increase, tax user fee rate increase of 3%, utility rate average of 5%, and move or adjust the 2025 capital projects. Council direction needs to be done by a motion. And before we conclude, I'd like to express my gratitude to Mayor and Council for your time and attention during this budget presentation. I want to also thank the managers and staff for their collaboration throughout this budget process. I've witnessed a desire for improvement and understanding and embracing change while facing challenges with inflation and future infrastructure requirements. Thank you. I'll pass it back to Mayor and Council for questions.
All right, thank you. So on the last few slides there, taxation impacts, does council have any questions regarding that before we start looking at motions regarding the presentation? Is there a desire to have a quick break before we start taking motions? Yes. Okay, so we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and then we'll start taking motions and having debate. Thank you, everybody, for that health break. It is now 2:28, and according to that clock, 73 seconds. 73 degrees in here right now. So, council, we've gone through a lot of information here, and I once again want to reiterate our thanks to the finance team in particular for their hard work and all of our staff for contributing to this process. We've had a lot of changes, and a lot of work has gone into this, and a new budget presentation and format. I think we're using our new software. Are we using our new software? Yes. So that's fantastic. So with that, we will start taking some motions here. So first of all, any things that council wants changed in this budget? If you have a change that you'd like to see in this budget, please put a motion on the floor. Councillor Chachka.
Okay, through the chair to council and administration. So I'm just looking for clarity from the mayor. So I guess there's some areas that I want to maybe discuss further with council and explore that. I'm not sure if it's best to put the motion on the floor and then explore it and then like do an amendment to the motion, or I just want to, how do you want to do this?
So how about this? Instead of just putting a motion on the floor, let's pick your subject and we'll discuss the subject, and then we'll put a motion on the floor.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That helps because I don't know what to do for a motion that way. Okay. So I guess my first question or area to just discuss, we did mention it briefly already. It's on page 43 of 76 in our book, the 2025 capital plan. 43 of 76. Nope, this one here.
Page 43.
That one. Okay. Yeah, so I guess we talked previously about the energy reserve, and so I guess, you know, the background from my perspective is that, you know, when I came on council, some of the franchise fees went into the energy reserve, and we've supported a lot of a great number of projects. I think when we had the energy facilitator here, we did a lot of upgrades to our facilities with lights and things like that. Some energy retrofits, I think a new boiler system for the office, and a number of other projects that have been really great for that reserve. And we're already a part of things that were in our plan, right? Like that reserve coincided with some things that we were doing at that time. So it seemed, it made sense to continue that. And right now, I guess, you know, this is where it's council's prerogative to determine where that money goes, and then administration, you know, if it's in a reserve, administration can only access what is available to them within that reserve. And where I'm headed with this is that I feel that having that energy reserve, or at least the amount that we currently have in it, I think it's $2.2 million based on the sheet we got on Tuesday. And maybe reallocating some of that money to the projects that we are currently, you know, seeking a debenture on. I know my personal philosophy is if I have a lot of money in one account, save for something that's maybe unknown, but I need money in another account, I transfer it. I don't know if it's wise to take out that type of a debenture when we have $2.2 million in an account that we're not going to be spending this year or maybe next year. We don't really have a good plan for that. So that's kind of what I wanted to discuss was how council feels about their philosophy with that, with having money in a reserve that we aren't spending and then taking out a debenture at the same time.
Thank you for that, Councillor Chachka. And I guess I'll ask a question to Ms. McDonald. Do we have $2.2 million sitting in that reserve with the reserve policy changes that we've made? Or has that been reallocated into some of the other newer reserves? I guess a clarification on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question. I believe that I felt that council was committed to that energy reserve in some way. Maybe how it gets funded might be different going forward. However, I left it there as a specific reserve, as an other reserve on the bottom. So there is, if it's on the sheet as 2.2, then that's what's in the fund at this point. There's a number of options we can do. We can evaluate adding more at the end of the year if there's a surplus. And we could increase the contribution to that reserve for 2025. If you want to continue with that program to fund energy type projects.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chouinard.
Through the mayor, to Denise, is there any kind of restrictions on that reserve? Can we spend it on, like some of the reserves are for specific items. Is there any restrictions on that account? Because it is an energy account. Can we spend it on whatever we choose is the question I have.
Thank you for the question through the chair to Councillor Chouinard. That is a council designated reserve. We haven't put a whole bunch of requirements on there. I believe the policy says energy type projects. So, however, it is a council designated reserve. It's not legislated. And so if council chooses to redirect it to particular programs, you have the full authority to do so.
Go ahead, Councillor Chouinard.
Okay, thank you, because I hear what the group's saying, and the only thing that sticks in my mind, and I heard it in the room, I'd be willing to put $1 million towards a fire truck, because that's important to me, because that's one big budget item, and we can't bury it, but if we're allowed to move $1 million to a $2.7 fire truck, I'd be in favor of that.
All right, so Councillor Chachka, would you like to put a motion on the floor? So we can actually debate what you're thinking.
Okay, so I would move that council.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
Okay, so I would move that council would redirect from the energy reserve 1.5 million to, and I might need CAO Beverages clarification on this, a reserve, a general reserve, or to be redistributed towards the aerial truck, or I don't know how you want to call that, so.
I think probably, sorry to jump in here, Ms. McDonald, but I think we can just go ahead and say we would like to fund that particular project from that reserve.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, that's
Okay,
what I would like to say.
So I think what you're proposing, Councillor Chachka, is that council authorize $1.5 million of the energy reserve to fund the aerial truck.
Yes,
That's your motion?
yes, that's my motion. Thank you for remembering it for me.
All right. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask Mr. Mayor if that was correct.
Just energy reserve, not plural. To fund the aerial truck project. Does that work for you, Ms. Beveridge?
Yes, Ms. Veerboom, if you can please, Ariel's AEI. But that's satisfactory. I don't have any issues with that, you?
No, can't be right. How about fire truck?
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. The council authorized $1.5 million from the energy reserve to fund the aerial truck project. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I'm in support through the mayor, I'm in support of this motion. The less we can, pull out of a debenture, the better. And Councillor Chachka is right. We don't have an in-game plan for that, and people's priorities are clear. And if the council's priority is clear, we need a new fire truck, a ladder truck of this kind, then we should pull it when we have that cash. We should be pulling it, and this obviously would alter the amount of payments we make in the debenture. I'm sure our finance team is busy calculating that if necessary, right? But I think that it's a better benefit, and we're not pulling all the money out of that reserve. I think you chose an appropriate amount to do that. So yeah, I'm in full support of that motion.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion is carried with one opposed. Next motion. Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor, just want to bring up a topic to start, if that's okay. The topic that we heard a lot on the budget consultation in terms of the business walk that Councillor Chachka had talked about was homelessness. And I can tell you sort of behind the scenes, the homelessness task force is trying to work towards an eventual sort of meeting of a business community to bring them together to talk about some of the things that they can do to, protect themselves. They're seeing, issues with regards to, and sometimes, criminal activity and that's things like that, and what they can do for that. But if we do that, then we also have to come to the table as well in terms of what we're doing as a municipality, right? And I can't just dump it back to the businesses. You have to do all of it. We have to take some accountability too. And it comes down to maybe perhaps security on Main Street. And this is not something that's come up today, but and I know in the past we've had cameras on Main Street. I think those are dated cameras. I don't know if you know if they're still there or what. They're 10 years old, so they maybe still run on beta. I don't know. So perhaps looking at an upgrade, and that can be used as a way to help safeguard our Main Street area. If we want to fill our Main Street up, then we have to tell people that we're doing our part to keep it safe and to keep people safe, whether that safety is real or perceived. And we've always talked about that word real or perceived in terms of these issues downtown. So this is kind of the first thing I'll talk about with regards to that sort of plan. And I'll perhaps put forward a motion because we're going to need costing on that, obviously. And then I'll put forward a secondary motion perhaps based on assisting businesses in terms of upgrading their security features within the downtown core. So I don't know if there's any other discussion on the topic, or I should just make the motion.
Councillor Chouinard.
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, I'm hearing and agreeing what you're saying. The only problem I have, what about the other businesses? Like, yes, there's Main Street, but there's other businesses. Do we expand it to back alleys or where they're having problems throughout the two one-ways? So I like what you're saying, but I don't know. We might run problem only restricting to Main Street.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Chouinard, I think that would have come up in my secondary motion, which I can just really quickly talk about now. And it was perhaps connected to a beautification grant that was sort of alluded to or talked about within the presentation, that businesses, no matter where you are, could apply for programs to say upgrade their security features or upgrading their the lights that come on the
Sensory lights.
sensory lights and things like that. And just, it's been a long day to remember these big words like sensory, okay? And that may be more suited in those areas to sort of answer your concern there.
Okay, through the mayor to Councillor Taylor. So what you're proposing, and I like the idea you're saying beautification, so we could do it like I don't even know what, I didn't want to make up a word, but security. So the same idea, we would give, it would give people a sense of thing and some kind of a grant, kind of like we did our backflow, if you upgrade the security. So rather than it being a Main Street light, businesses, whatever could. So I like what you're saying. If we could wordsmith, I don't know if we're prepared to do it here today, but something along that idea makes sense to me.
All right, anybody else? Well, go ahead, Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to council, I struggle with camera systems. I know we have one if it needs updating, and I'm not opposed to updating our camera systems, but what's it going to do? It's going to record them doing it. It's not a solution. It's just a oh, look, we can see them with their hoodie on. Oh yeah, that's so-and-so, she or he or it or whatever the case may be. They always do that. So all you're doing is you're going to have video evidence of it, and I don't think it's a solution to spend our taxpayers' money on recording them doing it. I mean, I can tell you from my job how many times I've handed over video evidence that's done nothing other than it records the crime. I think there's got to be a better solution for tackling this well, definitely North American challenge that we're all facing.
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to Councillor Petitiony, at no time will I ever say that any solution that we're going to put forward at this table is going to solve the entire issue. What we are looking for is finding ways to mitigate certain things. And this is one way that we can show that we are addressing or trying to mitigate this issue, right? In terms of an overall solution, listen, if you got an overall solution to this global issue, you can make a lot of money on it, because I'd love to hear it. But these are just little things, and right now, the motion that I'll put forward is really for administration to bring back sort of a cost estimate in terms of that, because we don't know that cost. And it may come back too extreme at this point that we could address it. We may not be able to address it within this budget, but it's something we could look at in the future.
All right, so I don't want to engage in debates. We don't have a motion on the floor yet. So, Councillor Trachka, do you have a question?
I do. Through the chair to administration, earlier in the presentation, I think it was under economic development, there was a mention about beautification and Main Street beautification, something like that. Can you elaborate on what that was referring to?
Go ahead, Mr. Chapates.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Chachka. My understanding is we used to have a beautification grant program. It was way before my time. I'm still relatively new, so having read through that previous program that we had, it's similar to that. It sounds like we would businesses could apply to the town to upgrade their storefront, and we would match them up to a certain amount of money to do that. That's essentially what it's basically bringing that program back.
Councillor Taylor.
So with that, I'll put forward a motion. So I move to direct administration to explore cost options for would be CCTV cameras, I believe, in the Main Street area.
So Ms. Vera Booman's working to get that on there. The council will direct administration to bring forward a cost estimate to upgrade cameras in the downtown quarter for council's consideration. All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Council, do we have any questions, comments? Councillor Sherrard.
Can we make a friendly amendment to Olive, like I wanted, like, you know, if we're gonna do it, explore to other businesses? Okay, so there's two? Thank you.
All right, so I'll speak to this. So when I was on council a long time ago, I was the individual that's pushing for cameras on Main Street, as we had a lot of damage occurring downtown at that time, and those cameras have not been upgraded since then. I do think it's necessary to have some sort of security downtown, even if it's to identify suspects. You know, what can be used in court or can't be used in court, that's not for us to decide, but at least helps police identify who may be responsible. It's not a solution to the ongoing issue, but if we have working cameras and we're able to identify issues down there, and the police are able to identify people, it may be a way to encourage people not to engage in that type of behavior. So I'm certainly in support of looking at seeing what those costs would be to upgrade the existing system downtown. With that, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion is carried unanimously. And you have a second motion, Councillor Taylor.
I move to direct administration to bring back a grant program for upgrading security infrastructure for private businesses in Edson. said slowly.
CEO Beveridge, does that give you enough direction?
Mr. Mayor, it does. Noting that I'm always cautious with these motions, just to, the timing. What the expectation is on timing here for bringing back a grant program within the next, is it a short period of time that you're requesting this back by the next, for this budget? Or are you willing to allow us to bring this back during an addition, oh my gosh, sorry, the sirens got me, in a future date?
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to CEO Beveridge, ideally, obviously, this budget, I understand the time restraints. It may be able to piggyback on other programs that we're already offering with beautification and just looking at that program and adjusting said things, right? If we're looking at businesses wanting to beautify, many businesses will say, why would I beautify if the next day it's going to get spray painted over, or people are misbehaving and acting inappropriately around that business? What's the motivation to beautify if they can't secure their own properties, right? If we're not doing our part to help protect those businesses and then encourage others to move down there. So that's sort of my suggestion if you want to take that and combine the two grant programs, if there's an option there.
Go ahead, Ms. McDonald.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Taylor, could I suggest that you allocate the funding source from the council initiatives budget reserve? And then if we bring forward that information, it can be more timely in that it already has a funding solution as part of the budget.
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
All right, so the motion now reads that Council direct administration to bring back a grant program to update security infrastructure for private businesses in the town of Edson to be funded from the council initiatives reserve. Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to council. So I think this is a reasonable program to take a look at. And I guess, it encourages that maybe we don't tolerate some activities in Edson, even if they are on camera, right? Because, just because someone gets caught doing a crime doesn't mean that they pay what we would feel is the right penalty for that. Just question, CEO mentioned the timing, and given that there is so much budget stuff to do, I think that this is something that could wait. I don't know if it has to be brought back to the next budget meeting, but I would certainly be interested in I support it. I want to hear more about it. I just think when we look at all the things that we're asking them to do over the next little bit, maybe this one could be next in line right after the budget.
Go ahead, CEO Beveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Chachka. That is helpful. One of the things I was going to note is that with other programs that we've put forward for the community, we've typically had a cap. It gives us an idea of how much council would like us to potentially think of, rather than, us thinking of an idea that potentially is not meeting what council had envisioned. So I would recommend that if you were considering this, just an understanding of how much council is willing to put forward towards this initiative as well. So.
You don't need that information today, though, or would you like that information today? Because then I guess we're making another amendment to this motion. Go ahead, CEO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to council. Sometimes when we're brought forward these ideas for programs, when we rush things, we don't do our best work. And that is something that I'm always cognizant of making quick decisions during the time that we're in right now. I don't think we have to have it all mapped out and figured out exactly how the program's going to work. If we know how much council would like to put forward for this initiative for 2025, then we make it happen. We bring forward the grant program for council's consideration during a committee meeting, and we work out the finer details. That's just my recommendation. I appreciate time, I guess, and to get it right rather than just put something together that may not be suitable.
Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to CEO Beveridge, or maybe Ms. McDonald, how much is in the beautification grant amount? how many dollar bill, like, how many dollar bills? What is the budget for the current beautification grant that we'd had?
10,000.
It was 10,000?
Was that correct? 10,000?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 10,000. It's also grant dependent though. So the grant that we're applying for does specify, I don't think it specifies security measures. This might be something to consider.
I think, Councillor Taylor, I think we're talking about two separate things.
No, the only reason I asked that question, because then I'll just say, if you're looking for a dollar amount, then 10,000 would be like, that's where I'm going with that, right? If you, that's the beautification grant, then a security grant can be 10,000, right?
All right, so the motion now reads that Council direct administration bring back a grant program to update security infrastructure for private businesses in the town of Edson to be funded up to $10,000 from the council initiatives reserve. I think we got all the information we need in the motion. Any further debate? Go ahead, Councillor Pasichny.
Is that any business in town?
Councillor Taylor?
Through the mayor to Councillor Pasichny, yes, through any business in town.
Councillor Chachka?
Through the chair to Councillor Taylor, so like even private, like home-based businesses, like a Tupperware salesperson?
See, this is what happens. Councillor Taylor?
Oh, boy. This is why I said to bring back information on this, right? In terms of we want to iron out all the details today through making our motion 10 lines long. I wouldn't say it would relate to home-based businesses. No, that's my preference, but that's where I'm at with that. And here's the thing, all we're trying to do is listen to the concerns of business owners in the areas and, how we can help with that, right? So, so my answer to your question, Councillor Chachka, is no, but there we go.
Councillor Chenard?
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, the wording says private business, so I'd leave it. If you have a business license in the town of Edson, you should be considered a business, and I agree with you. We're just bringing back information. If we have 650 people, everyone has a business license in town, apply for it, then we could be in trouble. So I'd leave it because we're looking for information.
All right. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, I'm going to call that vote again. All those in favor? All right, all those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried 5-2. Next. Councillor Chachka.
Thanks. Through the chair to council and administration. So the information or the subject that I want to bring up is regarding the outdoor arena rinks. We've got 4 of them in town. We just updated the one in Glenwood a couple years ago through partial town funding, and then the majority of it was a grant, and it's lovely. So this one is not a part of the discussion. The other 3, Griffiths, West Haven, and Tiffin, each have rinks in their areas, in their neighborhoods. And I did send council some pictures a few days ago on the condition of these rinks that I took a few weeks ago. And I'm very glad to see, Mr. Kitlitz, that we have them on the list. That's great news. But some of the conditions are a little bit scary. So in one of the rinks, there's kind of nails sticking out or screws from a gate. And I know in the past, last term, staff had indicated that it was very hard to flood the Griffiths rink. And I've never flooded a rink, but I imagine that you would need, like no holes, right, to keep that water in. And the pictures show really big gaps, like 6 to 8 inches in spots, right? So it was really, like, whoa, okay, like no wonder why they say it's so hard and they need such a big snowpack, right? Like I had no idea. And with our indoor rinks getting such high usage, especially during peak times, the desire to have the other rinks to be a bit more accessible is kind of where I'm going, to make it a little bit easier to flood, taking away some safety risks. There are some, the backdrops are very, some of them, well, one is missing a backdrop in one spot. One side has a backdrop, but the other side doesn't. I have no idea why. And then some of the other backdrops in other rinks in the neighborhoods have kind of big holes, or like it's kind of fallen apart or something. I really don't know what's going on with them. And council's never really invested anything in them, even just increase in maintenance. So what my proposal is, in advance of these being on the list and coming back at a future date, and they may get pushed back even then, right? You know, we don't know what the issues will be in a couple of years, if they'll still be on the current list of that year. So I guess my emotion is to reallocate the money currently being used on the Squirrely Whirly loop, and reallocating the funding that has been allocated there to just minor repairs, I guess, whatever that funding can allow to repair some of those outdoor rinks until we have the opportunity to maybe give them a bigger retrofit. And I'm not suggesting major repairs, putting some boards so we don't have big gaps, whatever that looks like, right? And then fixing the safety issues. Did you get that, Amanda?
Sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Chachka, if you wouldn't mind, you said to reallocate the funds from which loop?
The Squirrely Whirly loop.
Squirrely Whirly loop. In
All the new
Water Tower
staff are like, what is that?
in Water Tower Park, to put a pause on that this year. Yeah, I wasn't joking when I said that.
So the motion on the floor right now is that council direct administration to reallocate funds from the Squirrely Whirly loop to minor repairs of the outdoor rinks.
Yes.
Two R's in Squirrely.
Really?
There's an E. All right, Councillor Chenard.
Through the mayor to Councillor Chachka, I hear what you're saying. The problem they've had with these outdoor rinks, then that used to be the neighborhoods looked after them. So my fear is we fix them up, and administration has been saying we've been working with the neighborhood. So until we have someone, like I believe the West Haven one is one, and where's the other one now? Not the Tiffin. Both those used to be ran by neighborhoods, but everyone's lost interest. So if we fix them up, we need an interest group to say, yes, fix them and we'll maintain them.
There's still people that maintain them. Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to all of council, so earlier Mr. Kitlitz indicated that there's work being done with the groups, and certainly didn't want to speak too soon. I don't know if this motion is speaking too soon with the information that you've been working on, because again, if you know, if we have groups that are willing to do the work and we have private companies willing to step in and do that sort of thing, then this motion may not be necessary to that. So I hate to put you on the spot in terms of that.
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
Thank you, through your Mayor. So yeah, thank you. So a couple things. What I wanted to share was since Councillor Chachka went out and take those pictures, Griffiths Park, our parks crew went out to Griffiths Park, and they've actually done a bit of work to patch those holes. I think there's been puckboard put all the way around the perimeter to fill those voids. So they have put some time into that particular rink. Certainly, it's at getting close to the end of its life, and it does need to be replaced for sure. But we've patched some holes there. Yeah, and in terms of the potential to work on the Tiffin and West Haven community rinks, I think it would address a lot of the immediate concerns, like fixing the boards, fixing the backdrops. Just it's not a lot, but it's just a lot of that repair that hasn't been done for a number of years is what we're planning to do. So it may address this for a short term, but I wouldn't say it's a long term. So hopefully that helps.
Are you saying, so sorry, just to clarify, Mr. Kitlitz, are you saying you already have that work underway, or this money that's proposed here would do that?
We have a potential initiative that might do this without this motion. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to council, I'm a little challenged on this motion for the simple fact that I think we're we're diving down into operations with emotion and trying to direct and tell our staff how to do their job through emotion. That's way too far down in the depths of operations for us to be making motions on how to move their budgets around. Our job as a council is to set large budgets. If you wanted to advance those ranks, we should be looking at the capital plan that we have here and move those up by a year or two so it gets rebuilt and redone sooner. That's something that we should be directing as a council. But when we start to tell administration, take your budget away from this area and let's move it over to there, we're now trying to dive into the operations of the municipality, and that's not a council role. So I don't think I can't support a motion like this because we're really diving into the operations at this point, and I don't think that's fair to the staff of this municipality as a council to try and steer what they do with motions, right? So we have to be very, very careful on that. So if Councillor Chachka wants to advance the improvement of those things, then we should be talking about taking it from year, what do we have here? We have year 26, 28, and 29, and then you advance them ahead because Tiffin and Outdoor and West Haven were 28 and 28, maybe move those to 26 and 27 and make those a priority in the coming years. Because really, at the end of the day, as a council, those pictures you send that off to administration, say, hey, this should be addressed before winter. That's a thing that our town manager can handle without even having to go through this whole process of us debating it. Because to be honest, I can't vote on something like that because that's out of our realm as a council. So I think you just got to be careful on our motions here of what we're doing to administration.
Thank you for that, Councillor Chachka.
Through the chair to council, thanks for that, Councillor Positioning. I'm not trying to tell them what to do. I'm trying to allocate funds to that since we haven't ever done that before. And I know skating at some of those rinks last winter. I'm not a skater, but my son likes hockey, so I get to tag along. And I was just really surprised, I guess, at just how rough some of them were, right? And I know Admin has talked previously about how hard it is to flood Griffiths, and I like I said, I don't know how to do that, but I was really surprised when I saw some of the gaps and trying to make those rinks as accessible as we can, given that we have such high usage in our peak times in our indoor rinks. And when you go around, so West Haven rink has been utilized, the neighborhoods have been flooding that for the past several years, and it has a lot of usage. I'm actually really surprised at how many kids are skating on there after school and on the weekends, and seeing kids walk by my house, right, with skates, heading to the rink, right? So which is great to see. So and then also at Griffiths, there's not a lot of like places just to sit and put your skates on, right? So trying to allocate some money to help out with that, to enhance that. So I was preferring not to increase the budget and just reallocate funds that we already have existing. That's the intent, and then they can do those repairs as they see fit, because that's not our area.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? So I'll just speak to this. So I agree with Councillor Chachka. The condition of those rinks are in very poor condition, but those maintenance issues should be reported through reporter problem, and there are existing maintenance budgets that can deal with that. I do know the West Haven rink, 1 year there was an issue. The neighborhood could not flood it because all the water was pouring out. And they simply did a request through reporter problem, and Parks went out there that day and fixed it and got it going. So for that fact, I'm not going to be supporting this motion, even though I do agree that those rinks are in very poor shape. And with all the other priorities that we have, I look forward to seeing Mr. Kitlitz's plan, and hopefully we can address some of these rinks, particularly Griffiths Park. Because that is the town-owned and operated rink, but also supporting those neighborhood rinks as well. I do know they're well utilized, and the reason that one backstop's on that one rink is to protect the house. That's why that one was installed. So, any further questions, comments, or concerns? If not, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to council. Knee-jerk reaction, if I was coming in without hearing what Mr. Kitlitz had to say, I think I'd be supportive of this motion, but now I'm anxious to hear what we can come up with solutions outside of this, and perhaps having funding from other sources, and still, maintaining that community vibe within those rinks and having the community involved. Because I think there are members who want to do the work, and I fear that if we're taking on all that responsibility of upgrading and doing all those changes, then it's another thing just tasked with us. We really want them to make community rinks. I'd rather work with the community to see that happen. So I think I'm going to be voting against this motion as well.
All right. If there's other further comments or questions, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. I think that's the first time in history he lost 6-1, so it's not? Oh, motion defeated. Sorry, motion defeated. I'm not used to that. All right. And any other motions? Well, I will put a motion on the floor that council move the new Weyerhaeuser Trail connection from below the line to above the line, funded from the revenue sharing reserve.
Through you to Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, I just missed which reserve you want that.
The revenue sharing reserve.
Thank you.
All right, so you'll see the motion that council move the new Weyerhaeuser Trail connection. Sorry, go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, just can say moved above the line is it's less wordy.
Okay, just move above the line. Okay. The council move the new Weyerhaeuser Trail connection above the line to be funded from the revenue sharing reserve. So we did speak about this earlier. This is a project Weyerhaeuser has been able to access some funds, and I think it's going to be a huge benefit to our community to have a connection out to Vision Park as we are redeveloping that park. We heard today that equipment could also be moved along that right away as well, and I don't want to lose the momentum of what we're doing there. And I also know that the longer we put some of this stuff off, the more it's going to cost, or it's going to keep getting pushed and pushed and pushed. We have an opportunity here. We have a lot of residents and kids that want to access Vision Park, and some of them would prefer not to have to pick up and drive when they can bike or walk over there. So, and this fits in with being a connected community. So I think we have an opportunity here. It's, relatively speaking, compared to all the other items, this is a pretty small budgetary item with some grant funds coming in. So with that, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to administration, if we're moving something from below the line to above the line, does that mean we have to take something from above the line and put it below the line? Because that has generally been what we've done in the past. So I asked that question before I perhaps get into my next statement.
Go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to council. That is what was explained at the start of this process, but it's council's prerogative. This is your budget.
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to perhaps the mayor or the rest of council, if we do this, what are we moving then below the line? And I struggle with this. I do also struggle with the cost of this trail. I do echo everything that all of council said, that this is a much needed trail. It's going to be well used, well utilized. We have an awesome grant from Weyerhaeuser coming in that I don't want to squander. But wow, that was a lot higher than what I had originally thought it was going to be. I think everybody thought that. And I like, is there any way to we can get creative? And that's why I had said earlier, perhaps waiting that year. I know costs go up, but is there a way to get creative? Is there other grant funding or private sources we can outsource? And then the secondary question to all of council, if we do go through with this motion, is there something that you're interested in moving down? So.
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
Thank you. So thank you. Just wanted to supplement a little bit what CO Beveridge said about council prerogative to obviously move things up and down the line. There's the cost part of it, but there's also capacity parts. So the only thing I would caution is if this one comes up and another one comes up and nothing goes down. For example, First Ave comes up and this one we start becoming a capacity issue. That's a lot of projects for us to manage in 1 year. So there's the money side of it the council has to consider, and I'd certainly appreciate if council also considered the fact that we're going to have a capacity issue if we bring 2 or 3 up and we don't take anything down. So,
Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
Through the mayor to, I'm not sure who wants to answer this. I know one is a loan, but we took 1.5 million off the aerial truck. So with that said, one is capital, one's a loan. Can any of the other projects be? Because that is 1.5 we took out of the capital plan for the aerial truck.
I'm not sure what we were.
Okay, what I'm getting at is any of these other ones, we're looking for money, some of these other.
We're not talking about any of the other ones. We're talking about the trail. Warehouse
So
trail.
I'm answering, we took out the aerial truck. We have to take something from there and bring down? We took 1.5 out of the aerial. Out of
That's money.
the same
That was
page.
not a project. Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Kidlett. So my question was on capacity. So if we were to approve this, are you saying at this moment we have capacity based on the projects that are indicated?
through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe we could manage this one. I mean, this is a trail project. It's not a massive project. I think we could manage that, but I'd be concerned if we brought a couple more of those that are below the lineup, and some of the bigger ones obviously would be a bit more of a challenge without taking something off, but I'm pretty confident we can manage the trail that's being proposed at this point.
Councillor Taylor.
Well, that just took away my question through the mayor. That really took away my comment. But thank you for bringing up the capacity issue as well. We never know what we're going to run into. We always have unforeseen things that pop up that end up adding more to it. So it's always like we're planning for not 100%, we plan for like 85 to 90%. Leaving into the next year, we never know what we could run into. But if you're confident that we can deal with this issue, deal with the trail system next year, then I can be supportive of the motion. But still hoping that we can find ways to offset that cost, because again, that's a major cost for a trail. And just finding if there's other sourcing that we could do our grants, I'm not sure. But yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you. If there's no other further questions or comments, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Any other motions? There was some discussion about Canada Day. I don't know if anyone wants to tackle that. Councillor Taylor.
And through the mayor to council administration, just bringing up the topic in, because that was under the operating side of things, correct? So I don't know about budgeting for another set of fireworks, if that's something we want to do certainly in the long term. I would be more in favor of just asking a survey to the general public, what would you prefer at the end of the day? That's where I would be. And if you want, you can throw out the survey. You want both, but here's the added cost. If you want both, fine, but here's the added cost if that's something you want to do. And then we make decisions based on that. I don't know. I know it's perhaps I think it's another 20,000. I think it was, but it's it can be really. If we're adding fireworks in these two scenarios, then I just don't want to become the fireworks community of capital of the world at this point. So I'm in favor of really just keeping one, but I don't know if we need a motion to direct that into, because it's an operating thing, or is that something you revise and bring back? I guess some direction there.
CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Taylor. So regardless if it's operating or capital, at this point, if you wanted to direct that we had holds, we've put the money in. I guess operationally, we've put the money in, as that's what we heard that we were to do for 2025. So, as far as if we removed it, you want us to do a survey is really what your idea is, then we won't have the money. We'll have to come back, right? So it's like if we leave it in and we do a survey and we come back and say, the community really wants to, easy, 2 sets of fireworks, then we're coming back to adjust the budget later. So I'm just saying, like, it's,
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Wagstaff.
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor and all of council, some direction would help. If council desires to have a set amount, and we go to the community and say, this is the amount that council is proposing to use for fireworks, would you want to do it on once, or 2 small ones, or 1 big one? And if it's 1 big one, do you want to do it in Canada Day or in the fall light up? I think that would give us some parameters, because if I would predict if we went out and asked, if we asked for how many we'd like, they'd want both, or 3 or 4. So if we could have some parameters from council that says some direction of either a dollar amount or a number of firework dates, that would certainly be helpful for us to do any engagement.
Councillor Pasicny.
Yeah, thank you, through the mayor to council. I'm not opposed to having 2 sets of fireworks. We used to only have it on Canada Day. A lot of municipalities have Canada Day and New Year's Day or New Year's Eve. I know some people missed it in the summertime because it's part of the Canada Day celebration, but a lot of people really appreciated the fall light up fireworks because it was at 7 o'clock. And I know from my job I know our seniors really like the 7 o'clock in the winter because they got to go to it, and we wheeled them into those who couldn't stand outside. They got to go into the museum and watch it from indoors, and the response was great. So I don't think it's a huge budget item to worry about it, and I personally would be opposed to having the staff have to go out there and survey the community, because I think Mr. Wagstaff is correct in saying that they'll be like, yeah, I make it 3 times. So I think 2 is fine. I would definitely support leaving it the way they had proposed it.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, through the mayor, the rest of the council. I would probably support 2 fireworks, but I'd probably add a proviso in there, weather and fire conditions allowing for the summer show, because we really don't know how it's going to be, and hopefully it's not like it was 2 years ago.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Moore, and really that's more of an operational decision. And those things with fireworks, are booked well in advance, so if they are canceled, we still have to pay, but those are things that administration will think about when they're hosting those events. For myself, I am in favor of 2 sets of fireworks. It's one of those things where we go out and we celebrate our community. Yes, there is a cost associated with it. I heard a lot of feedback when it got moved, and it was a mixed bag. I'm one of those people that loves fireworks on Canada Day, and we need to have fireworks on Canada Day. But there was a lot of people that really appreciated the winter ones, and that's going to be like Councillor Moore said, and I think you said, Councillor Taylor, it's going to be weather dependent. If it's minus 40 outside, you might not have people. But I preface that we had a snowmobile show out here. It was the coldest day of the year, and we had hundreds of people out. So if people want it, they will come and they'll watch it. We do a lot of things in the community that we spend money on that people see no benefit from. And fireworks, I think 90% of the population, maybe 80% of the population will come out and enjoy it. It's something free they can do with their families. So I'm in support of adding that additional amount to Canada Day. Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor, and this is why I didn't want to put together a motion to have it defeated, so that's good. There we go. So you get that discussion out of the way, and that's fine. And then for my birthday, I also want fireworks. I'll just throw that out there. But 2 fireworks for now is fine, just for future budgets, though.
Through the chair, first, I just want to ask an informative question to administration before I make a motion that I'll get defeated on. Which is okay too. Regarding the below the line, the parks, the HVAC heat pump parks operation, I think it was Mr. Kitlitz that mentioned this. You said we'll see if we can make it work, and it kind of sounded like it was noisy and cranky. And I'm just wondering if there's capacity to do this. I really don't have any idea how long it takes to replace that or fix that So I'm just looking for that capacity question that you kind of alluded to prior.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I might defer to our facilities manager, because I know I had an informal conversation with him on these, and I'm not sure what condition they're in right now, or maybe Ryan, I don't know if you know. Can these hold off? Can we do it this year? I think we can limp them along, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, they're working. I mean, it all depends on how long for. There's also an energy component to it that, you know, will save us a lot of money over the winter. But you know, we can make it limp along. So.
All right, thank you for that. Councillor Chachka?
Okay, so I'm not a fan, through the chair to council administration, limping along sounds really hard. Doesn't give me a lot of optimism that it's good to do that. So before we start the discussion, I will make a motion that we move the HVAC heat pump parks operation above the line, funded from the energy reserve.
Ooh. Thank you for that, Councillor Chachka. That's why you left some money in there. See, what would we do without that reserve? Councillor Taylor?
We'd have all those.
Exactly. All right, so we have a motion on the floor that council move the HVAC heat pumps parks operations from the line. Operations above the line to be funded from the energy reserve. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Do we have any other motions for any adjustments council would like to see to this budget? Going once, going twice. Seeing none, I will then take a motion that council accept the draft 2025 operating and capital budget as amended. Go ahead, Councillor Chenard.
I will make the motion.
All right,
Do we read the whole thing or we're good?
that's good. All right, so we have a motion on the floor that council accept the draft 2025 operating and capital budget as amended. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council cancel the October 29th, 2024 operating and capital budget meeting? Councillor Taylor?
I so move.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Chachka.
Through the chair to administration, just looking for some clarity on why we're canceling it.
Go ahead, Ms. McDonald.
Thank you for the question through the mayor to Councillor Chachka. The proposed budget plan timeline was presented to council in August. I will take full responsibility that this one was in there and I saw it. However, the process that the town of Edson has for budget is slightly different than I've experienced in the past. And so I perhaps misunderstood how this, how it's done in a regular council meeting where you make motions and make changes. So at that time in August, we proposed the October 29th with the idea that we would be reviewing it and bringing motions forward and then adjusting it again. But looking at it now, I don't really think that it's, I actually had forgot about that October 29th meeting. It's not really necessary. We need, administration will bring it back November 13th for approval perhaps. And if there, unless there's further changes, and then we have a subsequent date, November 26th, that we could fall back on if necessary.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. And can I get a motion, please, that council schedule a budget meeting on Tuesday, November 26th at 7 p.m. in council chambers? Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I so move.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor, motion carried. Once again, thank you everybody for spending your Saturday here with us. I know you really enjoyed it. You rather not be at home watching the hockey game, Mr. Kitlitz. Thank you everybody for your tremendous hard work, and I will call this meeting adjourned.